I met Amelia on a Thursday in early spring, at a bus stop on the edge of town. The rain had just stopped, leaving that smell of wet dust that lingers after a storm. He was sitting on the bench, hair damp, humming softly to himself. I recognized the tune, an old folk song my grandmother used to hum while folding laundry. When I told him that, he smiled like we'd shared a secret. He said his mother used to sing it too. That small thing, that shared memory we never actually shared, felt like a thread tying us together. I didn't mean to talk to him for long, but when my bus came, I let it go. We started seeing each other after that, sometimes at the bus stop, sometimes at the bakery where he worked evenings. Amelia had this habit of tracing invisible shapes on the table while he talked. Circles, lines, sometimes words I couldn't read. I used to joke that he was spelling out his thoughts. He'd just laugh and say, "Maybe I'm drawing something I've already lost." I didn't understand what he meant then. Amelia was older than me by 7 years. My mother didn't like that. She said he looked tired, like a man already carrying ghosts. And sometimes he did. He'd go silent in the middle of a conversation, stare off as if listening to someone else. Once, when we were walking near the river, I noticed a faint mark under his collarbone, a circle with a line through it. I thought it was a tattoo, but he said quietly, "It's not supposed to show anymore." Then he smiled, and the moment passed. Despite everything, I couldn't stay away. He made ordinary days feel precise, important. We didn't talk about the future much, but there was something steady about being next to him, like sitting beside a warm lamp on a long night. Still, I began to notice small things. A smell of smoke in his clothes, though he didn't smoke. A faint coldness in his hands, even in summer. Sometimes when he walked me home, I'd hear footsteps continue behind me after he'd turned away. I tried to ignore it. Love makes you forgive the strange. The night we decided to move in together, he took my hand and said, "Promise me one thing. If I ever go, don't wait for me." I laughed. "Where would you go?" He didn't answer. He just looked at me, eyes glassy in the dim kitchen light, and said, "Just promise." I did, but I didn't mean it. We moved into a small house by the railway line that summer. The trains passed at odd hours, shaking the windows just enough to make the glasses ring. Amelia said he liked the sound, that it reminded him he was still here. For a while, it was good. We painted the walls, planted herbs in old cans, learned the rhythm of each other's breathing in the dark. I remember one night in August, the smell of mint from the window, the moonlight tracing his shoulder. He looked peaceful. I thought then that this must be what safety feels like. He died in October. It was sudden, a crash on the road near the bridge. They said he swerved to avoid a dog. When I saw him at the hospital, his face was almost untouched, only a faint bruise on his temple. His hands were cold again, like before. I touched the circle under his collarbone one last time. It looked darker now, like ink pressed into stone. After the funeral, the house felt enormous, too quiet. The trains still passed, but their sound no longer settled me. It scraped against my nerves. At night, I'd hear the humming, that same folk song, coming from the kitchen. I thought I was dreaming. Then one night, I followed it. The air smelled faintly of smoke. The chair he used to sit in was pulled out, rocking slightly. I whispered his name, and the humming stopped. The next days blurred. I found his mug on the table, though I'd washed everything the night before. A shirt I hadn't touched was draped across the bed. Once, I felt a breath at the back of my neck. Not a draft, a breath. I told myself it was grief. My mind is making shadows. But then came the letters.
They appeared folded on my pillow, written in his handwriting, the same uneven slant, the same looped L's. The first said only, "I'm still keeping my promise." The next one, "You shouldn't be alone at night." And the last one, "Now I can love you properly." I burned that one. The smell of the paper filled the house for hours. Still, every night, the humming returned. I started sleeping on the couch, but even there I'd feel the cushion dip slightly beside me. Sometimes I'd wake to find my hair tucked behind my ear, like he used to when I fell asleep before him. Once I heard him whisper, so close it vibrated through my jaw, "You said you'd wait." I wanted to scream, but my throat locked. Instead, I whispered back, "You're gone, Amelia." Silence. Then the faintest reply, a voice behind the wall this time. "Not yet." Neighbors began avoiding me. I must have looked strange talking to empty rooms. The postman stopped delivering after finding the door open one morning, radio playing though I hadn't turned it on. I stopped going out. The world felt thin, like it could tear. And then one evening, I noticed the mark under my collarbone. Faint, almost invisible. A circle, a line through it. When I pressed it, the air turned cold. I heard him humming again, this time behind me. I didn't turn around. It's been months now. The trains still pass, but I hardly hear them. The air smells like rain and smoke always. Sometimes I catch a reflection in the window. 2 figures instead of 1. He loved me more after he died. I think he's still trying to prove it.
I first met Aurora at the antique shop on Willow Street. It was a quiet place that always smelled faintly of varnish and dust, like an attic someone still loved. I'd gone in looking for a frame for my mother's old photograph. She was behind the counter, sorting a box of cracked mirrors. When she looked up, her eyes caught mine through the reflection of one of them. It startled me, the way the glass seemed to pull her face toward me before she actually turned. "You like old things too?" she asked. Her voice was soft, with a rasp, like she hadn't spoken much that day. I told her I did. And for some reason, I stayed longer than I meant to. She showed me a mirror she said came from a hotel that burned down in 1964. The frame was chipped, silver, the kind that used to be beautiful before time made it interesting. "It's cracked," I said. She smiled. "Everything worth keeping is." That was the first time I noticed her habit. She never looked straight at me, always through the glass or at my reflection, as if she trusted that version more. We started seeing each other after that. She closed the shop late, and I'd walk her home through the narrow back streets behind the station. Her apartment was small, filled with mirrors of every size. Some were wrapped in cloth, others tilted to the wall. I asked her once why she kept so many. She said, "I don't like to forget how faces change." There were moments I thought she was joking. But sometimes, when the light flickered across the glass, I'd catch something off. A delay in her reflection, a faint difference in her expression. It happened once when I kissed her cheek. I saw her reflection smile a second too late. I told myself it was my imagination. She must have noticed my discomfort because she said, almost teasing, "You see it too, don't you?" I didn't answer. Aurora wasn't like anyone I'd known. She collected stories the way others collected coins, tiny, incomplete things she'd trade for silence. She told me she grew up near the coast, that her mother used to cover every mirror in their house whenever someone was sick. To stop the soul from getting lost, she said. Mirrors hold what they shouldn't. Sometimes she spoke like that, half in superstition, half in truth. I loved her for it, even when it scared me. We made our own rituals. On Sundays, we'd sit by her window with the radio on low and trace shapes on each other's palms. Before I left each night, she'd make me stand in front of the tall mirror by her door. She'd stand behind me, her chin resting on my shoulder. "Now we know what we look like together," she'd whisper. It felt like a promise. By winter, I'd moved in. The apartment felt different then, heavier. I started covering a few mirrors myself, especially the one in the hallway. At night, I'd catch it reflecting movement long after we'd gone still. She said she never noticed, but she had grown paler, quieter. Some mornings I'd wake to find her standing in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at her own reflection without blinking. Once, I asked her what she was looking at. She said, "Just waiting to see if she moves first." I thought she was joking, but her tone didn't match her words. One night, the power went out. We lit candles and sat on the floor, the air thick with wax and cold air from the window. Aurora seemed uneasy, glancing toward the covered mirrors as though listening. "Do you hear that?" she asked. It was faint, like someone tapping on glass, rhythmic, slow. "It's just the wind," I said, though I wasn't sure. She stood, lifted the cloth from the tall mirror, and whispered something under her breath. I didn't catch the words. When she stepped closer, her reflection didn't follow. It stayed where it was, a half second behind. And then, I swear, it blinked. Not her, the reflection. Aurora gasped and stumbled back. The candle flickered out. For a moment, everything was dark. When the lights came back, she was gone. They found her the next morning at the shop. She apparently gone back there after midnight. No one saw her leave again. The police said she might have fallen. The back room was full of broken mirrors, shards spattered across the floor. They asked if she'd been unwell. I didn't know what to say. I stayed in the apartment for a while after that. It felt wrong to leave. But the mirrors, they changed. Even covered, I could sense them. Sometimes I'd wake to the sound of soft tapping again. And sometimes, when I lifted a cloth, I'd see her. Not fully, just her shoulder, the corner of her mouth, the faint tilt of her head. Always a moment behind me. I tried to move out after the second time it happened, but I couldn't make myself do it. Every night I told myself it would stop. Every night I felt her there, just on the other side of the glass. Last week, I caught my reflection blinking before I did. I stood there for a long time, waiting, breathing carefully like I might disturb something fragile. I said her name once. The reflection smiled. Now the mirrors are all uncovered. It's easier that way. The apartment feels full again. Not warm, but occupied. Sometimes I wake to see her standing behind me in the reflection, her hand almost on my shoulder. I don't turn around anymore. I just let her stay. She always blinks first, now.
The first time I went to Marin's childhood home, it smelled like lavender and mothballs. Her mother had died a few years before, and the place had been locked up ever since. A neat little house at the end of a dirt road outside Grayson Hill. Marin said she just wanted to check on things, but the way she said it, quiet and careful, made me think she meant something else. The rooms were perfectly preserved, like the house had been waiting for her to come back. Her old trophies lined the shelf. Her mother's cross-stitch hung above the sofa. Even the kettle was still on the stove. Dust settled in the spout. I remember the sound of the front door when we opened it. It groaned like something waking up. That night, we found her old room. The wallpaper was pale blue, the same color as her eyes, and one corner had started to peel near the window. There was a faint smell of perfume, faint but sweet, something floral and old-fashioned. Marin stood in the doorway for a long time before stepping inside. She used to brush my hair here, she said, every morning before school, even after I was too old for it. I sat on the edge of the bed, the springs sighing beneath me. "It's beautiful," I said. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We stayed a few days at first, fixing what we could. The plumbing, the garden gate, the shutters that banged against the wall when the wind picked up. The more time we spent there, the quieter Marin became. She'd wake up in the middle of the night and stand by the window, staring into the dark. Sometimes I'd hear her whispering, low, almost like she was talking to someone just out of view. When I asked her what she was doing, she said, "I thought I heard her voice. It's silly." But it didn't sound silly. It sounded like she wanted it to be true. On the third night, we found a small wooden box under the bed. Inside were hairpins, a dried flower, and a photograph. Marin and her mother sitting on that same bed, both smiling. Except in the photograph, her mother's eyes looked off, not toward the camera, but toward the mirror on the dresser. Marin touched the picture lightly, her thumb over her mother's face. "She used to sleep alone," she whispered. Something in the air shifted then, a coldness that didn't belong to the season. "Let's sleep here tonight," she said. I wanted to suggest the guest room, but she was already unfolding the blanket, smoothing it down, just like she remembered. We slept in her old room again last night. The first time it had felt almost nostalgic, a gesture of comfort for her, something to make peace with. But this time, the room felt different. The air was thick, heavy with that lavender scent that never seemed to fade. I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me flinch. Around midnight, Marin stirred beside me. "Do you hear it?" she asked. "What?" "The brushing." And then I did. A slow, rhythmic sound. Bristles moving through hair, coming from the dresser. I froze. Marin sat up, her face pale in the moonlight. "She's here," she said softly.
She used to do that every night before bed. I turned toward the sound, and for a second, just a second, I thought I saw it too. A shadowed figure in the mirror, moving gently, her hand rising and falling. The brush lay on the dresser untouched. The next morning, Maren seemed distant, but calm. She made tea and hummed one of those old songs her mother liked. When I asked about the night, she looked at me blankly. "What are you talking about?" "The sound, the brushing." Her brow furrowed. "You must have been dreaming." But it didn't sound silly. It sounded like she wanted it to be true. I had decided to say nothing more. We should have left that day, but she insisted we stay another night. She said she wanted to say goodbye properly. I agreed, though I didn't know why. Maybe I was afraid of what would happen if I refused. That evening, the air grew cold again. The shadows stretched long across the walls. The perfume smell was stronger now, almost choking. Maren sat in front of the dresser, staring into the mirror. "She looks happy tonight," she said. "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. She didn't answer. She just lifted the brush and began to comb her hair, slow and rhythmic, matching the unseen pattern I'd heard before. In the mirror, her reflection smiled, but Maren didn't. Her eyes met mine in the glass, wide and terrified. "Don't look," she whispered. "She doesn't like when you look." I don't remember falling asleep, only waking in the dark. The bed beside me was cold. The chair near the window creaked softly, as if someone had just stood up. The perfume smell was everywhere now, thick as fog. "Maren," I called. No answer. Then I saw her, or maybe just her reflection, sitting at the dresser again, brushing her hair. The mirror was fogged, but I could see two shapes in it. One brushing, one watching. I couldn't tell which one was her anymore. By morning, the house was silent again. The dresser was empty. The mirror was cracked down the middle, and the brush was gone. Maren was still lying beside me, her face pale, her hair perfectly smooth. She didn't wake when I shook her. The doctor said her heart stopped sometime before dawn. Peaceful, he called it. But there was nothing peaceful about the way her hand was curled around something invisible, as if holding on to someone. I buried her near the garden, where the lavender still grows wild. I haven't gone back since, really. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can smell that same perfume again. And I can still hear the soft brushing sound, somewhere just behind me. It always starts slow, then matches the rhythm of my own heartbeat.